The doctor's hands were shaking. I could see it clearly. Her hands trembled as she held my medical file. But what made my blood run cold was not the ultrasound screen, where my baby's heartbeat was still flickering steadily in black and white. No, she was not looking at the screen. She was staring at the paperwork, at my husband's name printed neatly at the top of the page. Then, without warning, she turned off the ultrasound machine. She shut it off in the middle of the exam, as if someone had unplugged my entire life. She addressed me in a voice so soft it was almost a whisper, and said she needed to speak with me privately right now. She led me into her office, closed the door, and locked it. At that moment, I had only one thought. Something was wrong with my baby. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I could not breathe. I could not think. Then she said the words that made my world collapse. She told me I needed to leave my husband that very day, before I went home, and the first thing I needed to do was contact a divorce lawyer. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. I asked her why. I said we were having a baby together, that we were happy, that I did not understand what she was talking about. Her face was pale as paper. She told me that was exactly the problem. What she was about to show me would change everything I thought I knew about my marriage. But before that, she said, I needed to understand how I ended up sitting in that office, 4 months pregnant, about to discover that my entire life had been built on lies told by the man who slept beside me every night. My name is Daphne Wilson. I am 32 years old. I work as a marketing director at a boutique firm in Connecticut. I come from what people politely call old money. 5 years ago, my grandmother passed away and left me an estate worth approximately $2.3 million in a trust, along with the historic Wilson family home, where 5 generations of women had lived, loved, and raised their children. I never flaunted it. I worked hard for my own career. I drove a 10-year-old Subaru and bought my coffee from the same place every morning. To me, the inheritance was security, not identity, but it made me a target. I just did not know it yet. I met Grant Mercer 4 years ago at my family's annual charity gala. The Wilson family had hosted the event for decades. That night, I was standing at the bar trying to escape a conversation with a man who had asked about my finances within 3 minutes of meeting me. Very subtle. That was when Grant appeared. Tall, dark hair, an easy smile. He asked what I was drinking. He joked about the terrible jazz band playing that evening. He did not mention money once. He said he was just a financial advisor who had received a last-minute invitation from a colleague. He claimed he had no idea who the Wilson family was. Looking back, that should have been my first red flag. A financial advisor who does not research the host family of a major charity event is like a chef showing up to a cooking competition, saying he did not know there would be food involved. But I was tired of obvious gold diggers, and here was a man asking about my favorite books instead of my bank account. We dated for a year. Grant was attentive and thoughtful. He remembered the smallest details. He insisted on paying for dinners, even though I could easily afford them. He made himself seem genuine. My mother, Vivian, saw through him immediately. After meeting him for the first time, she pulled me aside and said that his smile did not reach his eyes. She said something about him felt wrong, and she trusted that feeling. I told her she was being paranoid, overprotective, even jealous. We argued constantly about Grant. Eventually, we stopped talking. For 2 years, there was almost complete silence between me and the woman who raised me, just polite birthday messages, all because I chose to believe my husband over my mother. Now I can say it clearly. My mother was right, and she more than earned the right to say, I told you so. Grant and I got married after 1 year of dating. We had a beautiful ceremony at my grandmother's estate. He cried during his vows, tears streaming down his face as he promised to love and protect me forever. Looking back, those were probably the most honest tears he ever shed, but not from joy, from relief. His long game was finally paying off. After 2 years of trying unsuccessfully to conceive naturally, we visited a fertility specialist. The diagnosis hit us like a truck. Grant had severe male factor infertility. His sperm count was almost non-existent, and what little there was barely moved. Natural conception was essentially impossible. Grant appeared devastated. He cried in the car for 20 minutes. He apologized repeatedly, as if it were his personal failure. I comforted him and told him we would figure it out together. That was what marriage meant to me. What I did not know was that those tears were not grief. They were panic. Because his plan had just become far more complicated. We decided to move forward with IVF using a specialized procedure called ICSI, where a single sperm is injected directly into an egg. It was our best chance. Grant insisted on researching clinics himself. He said he wanted to find the best possible option. He handled all the paperwork, all the appointments, all the logistics. At the time, I thought he was being supportive because I was emotionally exhausted. I did not have the strength to question it. The first cycle failed. It was devastating. I could not get out of bed for 3 days. Grant held me while I cried, whispered encouragement, and promised that we would try again. He told me we would get through it together. The second cycle worked. 7 months earlier, I stared at a pregnancy test showing 2 pink lines. Those lines changed everything. I cried tears of joy. Grant held me close, already talking about nursery colors, baby names, and the future he said he had always dreamed of. Then, almost casually, he mentioned that I should update my will now that we were starting a family. He said it was practical, responsible, sweet, even. I thought it was the kind of thing a caring husband would think about. I had no idea he was already counting my grandmother's money as his own. For a while, everything seemed perfect. The loving husband, the baby on the way, the life I had dreamed about since I was a little girl playing in my grandmother's garden. I had no idea that within 3 months, a stranger with trembling hands would show me documents that would burn that perfect life to ashes. And I had no idea that the fire had been set by the man sleeping beside me every night. By the time I was 4 months pregnant, something had shifted in my marriage. At first, it was small things, the kind you notice but explain away because the alternative is too painful to consider. Grant started keeping his phone face down everywhere. He changed his password to one I did not know. He stepped outside to take calls and came back saying it was work-related, then changed the subject before I could ask questions. He claimed he was restructuring client portfolios during these late-night calls at 11 o'clock on Saturday nights. I am not a financial expert, but I am fairly certain the stock market does not operate on weekends. The late nights at the office increased, 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. He did not come home until midnight. He was a financial advisor, not an emergency room surgeon. There was no logical reason for that schedule. Then I found the receipts. A restaurant downtown I had never been to, $280 for dinner for 2. A hotel in the city, only 40 minutes from our house. I could not understand why my husband would need a hotel room so close to home. When I asked him about it, Grant had answers for everything. Smooth answers, practiced answers. Client dinners, networking, a conference that ran late, making it easier to stay overnight than drive home tired. And when I pushed harder, when I asked too many questions, his tone changed. He told me I was being paranoid. He blamed my pregnancy hormones. He said his mother had warned him women become irrational during pregnancy and that I should not turn into one of those wives. I felt ashamed for even asking. That was how good he was. He made me apologize for questioning him. Around the same time, the financial pressure began to intensify. Grant started making more frequent and more urgent suggestions about money. He said we should add his name to my trust in case something happened during childbirth. He said power of attorney was common sense, that every married couple did it. He suggested selling my grandmother's house, saying it was too big for us anyway. He said he could invest the money properly, that he knew exactly which funds would maximize our returns. This was the same man who insisted we needed 3 different streaming services because he could never remember which one had his shows. When I said no, carefully and gently, his warmth disappeared. He became cold and distant. He started sleeping on the far edge of the bed, claiming I moved too much now that I was pregnant. Arguments became more frequent. He brought up the trust. I refused. He gave me the silent treatment for days at a time. Interestingly, those silent treatments lasted exactly until he got hungry. He barely touched me anymore. He blamed my changing body. He said he did not want to hurt the baby. On the surface, it sounded caring. In my bones, it felt like rejection. I tried to talk to him about it. He told me I was needy, hormonal, difficult. I started to wonder if the problem was me. One night, I woke up at 2 in the morning and realized Grant was not in bed. I found him in the kitchen, hunched over his phone, speaking in a low voice. I stood in the hallway and listened. He said it was almost time, that by spring, everything would be settled. When he saw me, he ended the call immediately. He told me it was a work emergency and that I should go back to sleep. I did not ask who had work emergencies at 2 in the morning about things being settled by spring. I was too tired, too pregnant, and too desperate to believe my marriage was still intact. The following week, my best friend Tara came over for lunch. She sat across from me at the kitchen table and listened as I made excuse after excuse for Grant, his stress, his workload, his adjustment to becoming a father. Finally, she put down her fork and told me to listen to myself. She asked when the last time was that I had spoken to my mother. I did not answer. She asked when the last time was that Grant had been genuinely happy to see me, not performing happiness for others, but truly glad when I walked through the door. I could not answer that either. She told me to trust my instincts. She said something was wrong. I told her she was being dramatic. But that night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about Grant's phone, always face down, his late nights, his obsession with gaining access to my money, the way he sometimes looked at me when he thought I was not paying attention, like I was a problem to solve, not a person to love. 4 months pregnant, I went in for a routine ultrasound appointment. My regular doctor was on vacation, so I was scheduled with a colleague instead. I went alone. Grant said he had a client meeting he absolutely could not miss. It was supposed to be a normal appointment. I lay back on the exam table while the cold gel was applied to my stomach, waiting to see my baby move on the screen like always. Dr. Claire Brennan was professional and polite. She made small talk while setting up the equipment and asked how I was feeling. Then she opened my file. She looked at my husband's name, then at me, then back at the name. Her hands began to shake. She set down the ultrasound wand and turned off the monitor completely. She told me she needed to speak with me privately, and that was the moment everything began to fall apart. Dr. Brennan walked me into her office, closed the door, and locked it behind us. I was certain something was wrong with the baby. Every worst-case scenario flooded my mind in seconds. My hands were shaking. I could barely stay upright. Then she told me she knew what my husband had done, and that she had proof. She explained that her younger sister worked as a nurse at the fertility clinic we had used. 3 weeks earlier, her sister had come to her apartment late at night, crying uncontrollably. She had not been sleeping. She had lost weight. The guilt had been eating her alive. When Dr. Brennan saw my husband's name on my medical file that day, she recognized it immediately. She opened a folder and laid it out in front of me. Inside were documents that shattered everything I believed about my marriage. Her sister had confessed that 7 months earlier, during our IVF cycle, my husband had approached her privately at the clinic. He told her he had a special situation that required discretion. He said his wife did not know, but that he was using donor sperm because of a genetic issue he did not want to burden me with. He offered her money, $30,000. For a nurse drowning in student loans and credit card debt, it was an impossible offer to refuse. She helped switch the samples. My husband's sperm, which could not have resulted in a pregnancy anyway, was replaced with donor sperm. The embryologist had also been bribed separately. Together, they ensured the switch went undetected. When the pregnancy test came back positive, the guilt destroyed her. She could not look at herself in the mirror. She began calling in sick. She had panic attacks at work. 3 weeks before my appointment, she finally broke and confessed everything to her sister. As I sat there listening, Dr. Brennan explained the full scope of the plan my husband had constructed. He had spent $50,000 to frame me for adultery. The plan had multiple phases. First, he bribed the clinic staff and arranged the sperm switch. Second, he waited for a successful pregnancy and played the role of the devoted husband and future father. Third, after the baby was born, he planned to have the clinic records altered to show that our IVF cycle had failed, making it appear that we conceived naturally afterward. Then came the trap. He intended to suggest a DNA test after the birth, framing it as something sentimental and loving, a keepsake for the nursery, proof of fatherhood. When the DNA test revealed he was not the biological father, and the falsified medical records showed natural conception, he would accuse me of cheating. Our prenuptial agreement included an infidelity clause. If one spouse cheated, they owed the other $500,000 and forfeited any claim to marital assets. Additional damages could also be pursued. He planned to take my inheritance, destroy my reputation, and walk away as the victim. Dr. Brennan showed me more evidence. Original clinic records documenting the sample switch, payment records tracing the bribes back to accounts controlled by my husband, emails between him and the embryologist, written in vague language but clear enough to establish intent. Her sister had also tracked down the sperm donor. His name was Derek Sykes, a 28-year-old graduate student who had been paid $15,000 in cash. He believed it was a private donation arrangement. He had no idea he was participating in fraud. When he learned the truth, he agreed to cooperate. There was more. Dr. Brennan explained that she had done her own research. My husband had $180,000 in gambling debt, online betting, underground poker games, casino trips he had disguised as business conferences. The money used for the bribes had not come from savings. He had embezzled it from his own clients. Small amounts siphoned over time, carefully hidden in the accounting. His firm had no idea yet. My husband was not just trying to steal my inheritance, he was desperate. He was drowning, and he had decided to sacrifice me to save himself. I sat in that office for a long time, staring at the documents spread across the desk. Shock came first, then disbelief. I kept rereading the evidence, searching for a mistake that would make it all untrue, but everything fit. The late nights, the secret phone calls, his obsession with accessing my money, the way he had appeared at the charity gala as if by chance. He had researched me long before we met. Even his tears at our wedding made sense now. They were tears of relief, not love. I thought about confronting him. I thought about screaming, but instead, something cold and calm settled inside me. He thought I was weak. He believed I would crumble when his trap closed, that shame would make me compliant, that I would hand over whatever he demanded just to protect my child. He was wrong. I asked Dr. Brennan for copies of everything. I asked her to connect me directly with her sister. She agreed. On my way home, I kept my face neutral and my movements steady. Grant had installed security cameras around the house years earlier, claiming they were for protection. I wondered if he watched them now. When I walked through the door, he was waiting, smiling. He asked how the appointment went and whether the baby was okay. I hugged him, showed him the ultrasound photo, and told him everything was perfect. That night, he slept peacefully beside me. I stayed awake until 3 a.m, planning his downfall. The next day, I called in sick to work and drove 2 hours to meet a private investigator named Rosalind Weaver, a former police detective with 15 years on the force. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she told me my husband had made many mistakes and asked for 2 weeks. She had answers in 10 days. She confirmed the gambling debts. She confirmed the embezzlement. She uncovered an 8-month affair with his assistant. She even found another wealthy woman he had targeted years earlier in Boston. I met privately with the nurse who had helped him. She was terrified but willing to testify. I made the hardest call of my life and contacted my mother. She did not say she told me so. She asked what I needed. Within 48 hours, she connected me with the best divorce attorney and a criminal prosecutor specializing in fraud. The pieces were finally in place. And my husband had no idea. My lawyer moved quickly. Her name was Sandra Kowalski. She was small, silver-haired, and looked like someone's sweet grandmother. In reality, she was ruthless. She reviewed every document, every statement, every piece of evidence. She told me my husband was facing charges for fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. The infidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement worked in my favor now, because he had been having an affair for 8 months. His plan to falsify medical records after the birth constituted intent to commit another felony. The prosecutor agreed. Molly, the nurse, gave a formal sworn statement. The embryologist cooperated in exchange for reduced charges. My husband's firm was notified about the missing funds and immediately froze his access to client accounts. A judge reviewed the evidence, found probable cause, and issued an arrest warrant. 6 weeks after that ultrasound appointment, I suggested we host a celebration at my grandmother's estate, a baby moon party. Both families, close friends, an afternoon gathering in the garden. Grant loved the idea. He believed it would give him more witnesses to his role as the devoted husband, more people to feel sorry for him later, more sympathy to collect when he planned to expose me. I told him I would handle everything. He agreed without hesitation. What he did not know was that my version of handling everything included police officers waiting in the guest house, my lawyer stationed near the bar, the sperm donor ready to testify, and every piece of evidence organized in folders. The day of the party arrived. The gardens were in full bloom, white tents lined the lawn, champagne chilled in silver buckets. A string quartet played softly near the rose bushes. 50 guests filled the space, smiling and celebrating. Grant was radiant. He worked the crowd effortlessly, touching my stomach whenever cameras appeared, playing the perfect father-to-be. Around mid-afternoon, he did exactly what I knew he would do. He suggested a DNA test as a romantic gesture, a keepsake for the nursery. Proof of fatherhood. He encouraged opening the results right there in front of everyone. I pretended to hesitate, then I agreed. Instead of producing a DNA kit, I walked to the podium and picked up the microphone. I thanked everyone for coming and said this celebration should be about family and truth. I explained that my husband wanted to reveal something special and that I would help him do exactly that. Then I began. I explained his infertility diagnosis. I presented the original clinic records. I revealed the bribes. I named the nurse, the embryologist, and the donor. I explained his plan to accuse me of infidelity, to trigger the prenuptial clause, and to steal my inheritance. I revealed the embezzlement, the gambling debts, the affair with his assistant, the previous woman he had targeted years earlier. One by one, witnesses stepped forward and confirmed everything. Grant tried to deny it. He claimed I was unstable, that pregnancy hormones had affected my judgment. No one believed him. Then the police officers stepped onto the lawn and placed him under arrest. As they led him away, he begged me to reconsider. He claimed he loved me. He told me to think about our baby. I looked at him and told him we had already worked it out. Grant was denied bail. His firm pressed charges. The criminal case moved quickly. He lost everything. 4 months later, my baby was born, healthy, perfect, innocent. Family, I learned, is not about DNA. It is about who chooses you, who protects you, who stays. I kept my grandmother's house. I rebuilt my life. I rebuilt my relationship with my mother. Grant Mercer thought he married an easy target. He married a Wilson, and he would spend many years thinking about that mistake.